And 2017 is shaping up to be a smart year for Birkin bag investors. 2016 saw an average annual return of over 14%. Now, for more on these types of alternative investments, I spoke to Oliver Williams, an analyst with WealthInsight. I began by asking him how and where people are spending their money.
This is very much looking not so much at the alternative investment market, but actually what we call the luxury investables. So we're looking at the wine and the cars and the artworks, and very much in the jewelry as well, which goes with it. And this is different to the wider alternatives market, and it's also different from the luxury retail market. So these are assets that people buy into. They're assets that accumulate in wealth, and they are assets which are by definition finite. There's only a limited number of them.
Now, Chinese collectors hold the second highest amount of luxury investment worldwide. So what types of consumers are turning to these investments, and why is it so appealing to them?
The consumers are obviously those with money. So these are the high net worth investors. We look at the investors with over $1 million in assets. And the reason they're looking for them is normally several different reasons. I mean, one of them, as you mentioned, is global volatility. People like to buy into assets which they can hold, which they can keep in their houses, or they can keep in warehouses. But also it stems very much from passion. So we don't normally see investors who buy works of art if they're not interested in art. The same goes for wine. People only really buy wine if they're interested in the wine, and jewelry and cars and so on.
Now, obviously, there are a lot of different avenues. We talked about jewelry, wine, perhaps. So are these the sectors that tend to garner the most interest? And if you're a consumer, how do you know which ones are going to be the ones that hold their value?
You don't really. I mean, they all accumulate in value. I think, again, if you're interested in the asset class, you will sort of know which ones are going to accumulate in value. However, there are lots of advisory companies. Private banks are opening up specialist departments to help their clients in understanding these markets and in building up art portfolios and also insuring them and keeping them. So there's a lot of advice out there for the high net worth, for the wealthy buyer of these assets. But I think these are very much passion investments. We don't normally see people who go into these if they don't have at least a slight bit of interest in buying into artworks or wine or jewelry.
Now, let's also look at the second-hand luxury market. We know that it's popular in the US and Europe, but what about China? How is that viewed with investors there?
I think it's catching on, but this sort of goes on to what we've been talking about. So the luxury investments are different from the luxury products. And these luxury investments are very much things which are, by their nature, they have to be second-hand. I mean, you don't buy a Picasso or a Renoir first-hand, and nor do you normally buy a case of Chateau Lafite wine first-hand. The only way to get your hands on these assets is through second-hand markets. And so this is starting to emerge in the Hong Kong market and more so in the mainland Chinese market. So actually, the second-hand market is gaining traction and has been doing so for several years, but it starts with these luxury investments.